Hello, everyone, and welcome to Empower Global Coaching Ministries podcast. Be an encourager. This is your host, Claribel, transformational life coach. I am so happy you are joining us today. Very important question that I want to ask you for that part of the topic. How does the way we talk to ourselves, our internal language, shape our ability to persevere or give up?
Beautiful. The inner critic that a lot of people talk about, even, if you remember as a kid, the Looney Tunes, right? Where, you have the angel and the devil, right? I think Tom and Jerry used to do that. And, we have a lot of voices in our head. There's not just one voice, right? We've all had great days where that voice is like, you're the man, you're amazing. We've all had bad days where like, you're not amazing. Maybe you talk very negative. And, one of the things that I like to do is whatever Bible story you like, imagine that each character is a voice in your head. And think about it like that. And then it's like, so imagine, let's just say Moses, right? Moses would be the leader. You can imagine Pharaoh being the persecutor or the person or the voice holding you back. And you can do that with literally any Bible, any story from any of the religions, really, you can do that with. And we want to really give ourselves grace. And we want to understand that that voice isn't true. Just because we hear something doesn't make it true. And in fact, many of the things going on in our head are not true. Many of it we've adopted from other people. Many times that's the voice or that's the way a parent or a teacher spoke with us, and that becomes a voice in our head. And the trick is, don't try to stop the voice. Because if you try to stop it, now you're engaging, now you're wrestling with the voice, and you're actually making it stronger. So if you imagine if I was at a bar, I'm obviously, I'm going to be 45 this year. I'm a normal statute. I'm like 5'11". If I'm in a bar and some guy knocks into me, and I just say, oh, okay, sorry, or excuse me, or no problem, and he's like, what's your problem? Like, and starts being aggressive, which we've all seen, like Roadhouse kind of stuff like that. Now, if I start engaging back with him, no, you hit me. No, you bumped into me. What's your problem? Now, all of a sudden, I'm in an altercation. Now I'm in a fight. Now I am interacting and engaging with this person who's obviously out of their mind because they're not out on a Friday or Saturday night to have fun. They're out to actually be a pain in the ass. And so I don't want to engage with them. I teach my son who's 5. If people are making fun or playing, he's 5 years old, just say thank you, good for you. That's it. Thank you, good for you, and walk away. Why am I going to put my value and my self-worth into someone else's hand that I don't know? If a friend of mine, legitimate friend of mine, says something negative to me, that's a different situation. That's a different story. Because then it's like, well, I care about this person. Why are you saying that? Like, what am I missing? But if it's a random person, why do I care? And if you think about it, I do a lot of stuff in sales. And what's the number one thing in sales is rejection. And so if you're going to give this person that you don't even know your whole worth, and if they say yes or no, that's going to determine if I'm of value. That makes no sense. We don't know what's going on in their life. If a man walks up to a woman and asks her on a date and she says no, that doesn't mean that he's not valuable. That doesn't mean anything. Now, listen, you can work on your skills. You can become more skilled at sales. You can become more skilled at talking to people. But at the end of the day, you don't know what's going on. A guy that walks up to a woman and asks her on a date, maybe she has a stomachache. Maybe she's not feeling well. Maybe someone just broke up with her. Maybe she just got fired. Maybe she's just not a nice person. Whatever it is, that has nothing to do with you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start putting your value and self-worth and approval into other people, you're going to be down to fail. There's no way, because you need to have it for yourself. You need to really have it for yourself and not look at that stuff for other people. And in fact, that's what's going to make people say yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, the word cool, like people like, oh, I want to be cool. The more you try to be cool, the less cool you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it is. So if you wake up, oh, I'm gonna look cool, I'm gonna wear the cool clothes, I'm gonna wear the cool sunglasses, I'm gonna say these things that are cool, everyone around is gonna think you're not cool. You're trying too hard. It's the same kind of concept.
Mm-hmm.
By not seeking approval, by not seeking validation, more people are going to want to do business with you. More people are going to
Mm-hmm.
want to interact with you because you're not seeking it.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned two very important things. You mentioned that internal conflicts that sometimes happen when people are used to hearing those negative voices. To change that around by not engaging, because, like you said, instead of it becoming subdued, it will grow even more. So there will be more internal conflicts. The best thing is to, practice, I will say, feeding the positive voice inside of us, and self-compassion, having that self-compassion that we are trying and trying our best. I believe you mentioned also about competition, not to see the world out there as a competition, but to do the best in anything that you go out there to do.
Yeah.
Be yourself. If you're quirky, whatever you are, just be yourself, and not try to match, other people's what they're doing. That's one of my, how you say, my pet peeves, because in my lifetime I got to mentor a lot of different college student, university student. So my whole goal was to help them grow so that they can become better than, do a better job in the field that I was in, that they can do a better job when they graduate. So having that focus, I want to see somebody progress. I want to see someone make it. I like that example. So in a season of chaos and loss, how do you start to become that person who can handle anything, instead of collapsing under the pressure, especially nowadays that we're hearing so many things, and it's really hard to, we don't know what to believe these days because it's such conflicting
Yes.
messages that we're getting.
Absolutely. So, I mean, just to go back for a second, competition is okay. It's okay to, let's just say, in a work environment, to want to be the best
Mhm,
salesperson. It's okay if you own a business, if you're a
mhm,
plumber, it's okay to want to have more customers or be a larger plumbing company than the guy down the block.
mhm,
That's okay. What we don't want is to be envious. What we don't want is
mhm.
compete on their level. We
Yes.
want to compete
Mhm,
on our level.
mhm,
So, like, I'll give you an example, right? Um, let's say you're a smaller company and
mhm,
you're competing with a much larger company. So use that against them. Instead of saying to people, oh, no, I'm just as big as this guy, I have so many people, and
mhm,
lying, say,
mhm.
you know what, Mrs. Smith, that guy, he has so many customers, everyone's just a number. He doesn't really
Yes.
care about
Mhm,
anyone. I'm a small business owner. This is my cell phone. I'm talking to you. That
mhm,
company, you don't even know who the owner is. You're never going to speak with the owner.
mhm,
Now, listen, I'm not saying I'm going to come to your house every time. I'm going to have workers do that. But if you have a problem, this is my number. You call
mhm.
me, I will answer, and I will take care of you personally. Now, that's a much better way to compete with someone,
Yes, definitely.
because now I'm
Mhm,
competing on my terms. I'm using what I'm good at to compete with them, just like David and Goliath.
mhm,
Um, as far as the voices in the head, which everyone has, by the way,
mhm.
doesn't mean you're crazy. Um, what's happening is a very good practical technique to do.
Mhm,
Write it down on a piece of paper. So I'm just going to say there are people out there that think that, like, I'm so stupid. There are people out there that really they're looking for proof that they're stupid, and every time something goes wrong, they say they're stupid. So what you would do is you would take a piece of paper and you would write, I am stupid. And then you would say to yourself, okay, let me think. If this was my friend and he was saying to himself that he is stupid, would I want him to say that to himself? Take it away from you. Use a third party. And then say, you know what? I wouldn't want my friend calling himself stupid. And I would not want to be friends with someone who would call me stupid. So instead of like wrestling that voice, we have to start picking out examples of things that are smart. We have to start looking for proof that we are not stupid. And we might have to write that down. And I'm just using that as an example because that is something that people do have a fear of. And so you might want to have to write it down. Like maybe you graduated college. Maybe you didn't, but maybe you have a successful business. Maybe you didn't, but you have the ability, you built something. Whatever it is, start looking for proof that you are not stupid. Start looking for proof to understand what's going on. And so it's very powerful when you start doing that. When you start writing it down, because that's what breaks limiting beliefs. Okay. I'm not good enough, right? Maybe the voice in your head is very specific. But when you write it down and you look at it at a piece of paper, you're removing it from your mind. You're thinking about how this would feel if it was coming from a third party, and it really, really starts shifting. That's a very good shifting kind of thing. Now, as far as collapsing, as far as going through things and collapsing, it's all about resilience, right? And once again, it's not something that everyone's going to have the same level of. And you know what? Some people are going to collapse. And if that's the case, that's okay. But the quicker you can get back on the horse, the quicker that you can get back on the mat if you're a fighter, the quicker that you can get back on the phone if you're a salesperson, the better you're going to be. Don't look at it. If you think about it, if we're just using the word collapse. If you think about like you hit rock bottom, in a way, think about it, great, I don't have anywhere lower to go. Great, it's only up from here. That's where faith comes in. And it's really a self-reflection kind of thing. It's really going inward because at the end of the day, everything is you versus you. You are the main character in your movie. I am the main character in my movie. And when we give away our power and we allow other people to be the main character, that's when things get a little fuzzy. And so if someone's out there and they have collapsed or whatever they think that means, don't think it's over. Just think, great, this is the beginning. I'm going to start to rebuild. It's like if you think about a house, my background's in real estate. If you think about California, and right now they're experienced all these fires, and it's awful. It's crazy. Now that's rock bottom because I've seen some of the houses there. It's literally 0.0. They lost their whole life. They lost their whole family pictures, all that stuff. That's a collapse. For you to come the next day and say everything's fine is delusional. But for you to start rebuilding slowly, for you to start taking a few steps, that could be one phone call to the insurance company. That could be one, honestly, one of the things that I love to do is just write a list of what needs to get done. I'm all about getting things out of your head. So if you're overwhelmed, make a list. If you don't know what the next steps are, make a list of what you think the next step should be. If you don't know what the next step is, make a list of what the next step shouldn't be, right? So once again, like just in the gym scenario, if you don't know what to do in the gym, well, you don't want to eat McDonald's. You know that you don't want to sit and watch TV for 5 hours. So just start making a list of everything not to do. But get it out of your head. It's so, so important. And I think that a lot of people don't do that.
It's almost like reprogramming your mind with positive action steps that you can take. And the more that you focus on the positive things that you want to do or achieve, or, becoming that organized in your mind, the more easier it's going to become for you to achieve what you need to achieve. And the negative voices are going to just be, lowering down. You're not going to even pay no mind to it, because now you're focused. Because I do teach that in my lifestyle changes class. So it
Nice.
just reminded me of one of the example that I just gave in one of the class. So what role does spiritual identity play in shaping mental and emotional resilience during difficult season?
I think that the stronger spiritual identity you have, once again, it goes into that faith, right? When you start increasing faith and you start looking at the challenge or the situation as a game, as, okay, this is where I am, this is what's going on. The first question is, do I believe that anyone can get out of this in the world? If I can target a person in my mind that I'm like, they would be able to do something with this, I know it's possible. Once I know it's possible, I just keep working it slowly, slowly. And, one of the things is, if you can imagine, you're in this dark room and you can't see anything. And so how you're walking is very careful. You're doing very small steps because you can't see in front of you. And all you know is you're feeling around, you're going slowly, and then as you go, the light will get brighter and brighter. So don't, I think a lot of people, it's so nuanced. You can have the end goal, but you don't need to know every step to get there. And in fact, you're going to have to course correct. And as you do it, you're going to have to change the path a little bit. You can still have that goal. And then as you're going through it, adjust. And so sometimes it's just, what is the next step? The next step might be just putting on your sneakers. The next step might just be doing one phone call. The next step might just be sitting and meditating, sitting and praying. And that might be the only step that you know. But what happens is, we're like, okay, well, I'm not even going to do that step unless I know the other three steps. But that's wrong. But it feels good to kind of say, well, it's okay that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing because I don't know those steps. Instead, it's like, okay, well, I only need to know one step ahead. And you know what? If you really don't know that next step, ask someone, but ask the right person.
Yes.
If you really don't know at all, 0.0, you have no idea what to do, seek help. Call a psychologist, call a psychiatrist, call a priest, call a rabbi, call a good friend, call people that, I always say, just don't take advice from people that aren't where you're at or where you want to go. So if you want to increase your financial situation, don't ask a homeless person for his financial plan. You want to ask people that are somewhat on the road to where you want to go. And you want to ask people as much as you can that are going to give you not only the right information, but they're going to want to lead you the right way because they care. And listen, there are a lot of times and a lot of people out there in the world that really don't have anyone. They don't have family, they don't have friends. And, that's where faith really comes in, because if you go to a church and you ask to speak with someone, chances are a priest is going to speak with you. Chances are a nun will speak with you. Chances are a rabbi will speak with you. And that's a good thing. And that could just be the first step. And could be a doctor. It really, but you just want to make sure it's someone that has your best interest. That's the most important thing. And also, the word selfish gets a little bit of a mixed rap. And sometimes in life, we have to be selfish.
Yes, I agree with that.
No, and I think that people pleasers, for example, they're giving all their power and all these things, and they're putting everyone first. And that's actually wiring their brain to put themselves last. And so being a little bit selfish, for lack of a better word, for putting yourself first, that a lot of times is the start of it. That a lot of times is the start, because people have a problem receiving. You know, if you just go out today and you give 10 people compliments, they're not going to know what to say back to you. People don't know
That's
how to
true.
receive compliments so well. So, you know, getting in the habit of receiving, getting in the habit of, you know, I always use the airplane analogy. If you're on an airplane and something is, God forbid, going wrong, you have to put the air mask on yourself first, or else if you just put the air mask on everyone else, you're going to pass out and die. Better to take the 5 seconds or 10 seconds, make sure your mask is good, and now you can help the whole plane. And so, like, if you think about someone like Oprah, why is she able to build all these schools and all these things in Africa and in America? And Tony Robbins is able to give out all these food and all these dinners to people. It's because they saved the money themselves first. They worked on themselves. They worked on their career. And what I find a lot of people do, like small businesses and people that are very good people, is they give so much that they run out of anything to give. And so we really do need to give to ourselves, especially when things are going on where we feel like we're going to collapse. We really need to focus on ourselves. It's like a plant where you have to, so you know, change the soil, put the water in it, give it the love, give it the sun before you start taking all the fruit off of it.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense. The next question is from victim to creator, harnessing emotions as fuel for growth. In Proverbs, it tells us that we may not know what tomorrow holds, but we know who holds tomorrow. How do we practically prepare for the future when we have no guarantees? And how does faith influence our planning and perspective? And I'm going to go to the first question, which is, we often think that being strong means not feeling. How will you redefine emotional strength and its role in growth?
So, you know, with the whole victim versus creator, there's actually a great book that talks about it, and I can't remember the name. It's such a good book. Um, I'll have to get it for you. But you know, we're made in God's image. What makes humans so amazing is that we are creators. Now, of course, we have the ability to create children, which most animals do. But we have the ability to create what's in our mind. We have the ability to create something out of nothing. If you think about fire, that's the perfect example. You're making fire out of wood. You're making something out of nothing, and that's what God can do. Now, we can't do it on the same level as him. We can't even think about how he does it. But what we do know is we know that humans have this ability to create music, to create artwork. We have this ability to, hey, I have this idea, and make it. Look, Facebook is an idea that someone made. This computer that we're talking on, Zoom, is an idea that someone made. When I was a kid, there was no Zoom. When I was a kid, there was the Jetsons, and you saw on the Jetsons that they had video calls. There was no iPhone, there was no video, but that idea was created. And that's why when you read old books, you see that those are the ideas, and those ideas got into people in the future, and then they created it. Someone drew a boat before someone was on a boat. Before there were boats, someone had to come up with the idea of a boat. And so that's what causes faith to be so strong, because we have this ability to create something out of nothing. And so with the victim, you know, listen, I think that some people are more geared towards it than others. I think that it makes people feel good to give up that kind of control, to say, there's nothing I can do. I'm hopeless. I'm helpless. Um, and in reality, the only answer is really ownership. taking ownership, taking responsibility, even for the things that
Mm-hmm.
aren't your fault.
Yes.
Taking the responsibility because it's your world.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the more responsibility, the more ownership that you can have over it, the better you're going to be. And it's kind of like the difference between driving a car and being a backseat driver.
That is true. That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
So remember that, that we have choices. We either can stay stuck in that victimization, or we can move forward, heal, learn how to heal, and progress in our lives. So thank you for that example. So, the invisible battle, negative self talk, and emotional turbulence. So, according to the National Science Foundation, up to 80% of the thoughts each day are negative. How does our inner dialogue shape our external outcomes, and what are a few ways listeners can begin to reframe those internal conversations today? And I know that you shared a little bit a while back, but if you can elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Totally. So
Mhm.
there's something that a lot of people know, and it's spoken about a lot more now than before, and that's RAS, reticular activating system.
Mhm.
And that's a very fancy way of saying you start seeing things that you have on your mind. So I'll give you the basic example. If I tell you I just bought a yellow Corvette,
Mhm.
in the next few days, you're going to see a yellow Corvette because I just put that thought in your head. You always saw it here or there. You just didn't care.
Pay
But because
attention. Yeah.
we're friends, and now I'm
Mhm.
telling you that I bought a yellow Corvette, there's something in your subconscious mind that's like, look over there, look over there. I see it. And so we want to do that for
Mhm.
ourselves. So it's about finding finding opportunities and finding truth and finding ways that prove that what we want to change is happening.
Mhm.
So if the goal is to make more money, then we want to find ways that money is coming to us. We
Mhm.
don't want to downplay it. So even if we find $1 in an old pair of pants, that's money coming to us.
Yes.
By you saying, yeah, I found $1 in my pants, no big deal. That's you causing the negativity.
Mhm.
You need to build on small wins.
Mhm.
You need to be out there with yourself and finding evidence, finding proof of what you want. And I'm telling you, the dark side is always stronger than the light side.
Mhm.
It's going to be much easier to find proof of negative things. But
Mhm.
you know what? Don't worry about that side of the column if you have a pro and con. Worry about the positive side, which is finding things like, oh, you know what? This person called me today and asked me for advice.
Mhm.
Obviously, I have to offer something of positive. I have to be a
Mhm.
good person. Why else would this person ask me for advice? So if anyone's out there and, oh yeah, I have all my friends, they ask me for advice. Well, they're not, if they didn't want your opinion, they wouldn't be asking. So that means
Mhm.
that it's coming from somewhere good, right?
Yes.
So I feel like a lot of the negative self-talk, a lot of the things is finding evidence, finding proof of good things. And then the other thing with the negative self-talk is really just let it be.
Mhm.
You don't have to believe every voice in your head. You
Mhm.
know, I'll give you an example. If you've ever been driving in a car,
Mhm.
if you've ever been on a very tall building, it's actually normal for there to be a voice in your head. I wonder what it would be like to just slam the car or just like turn the wheel. If you're on top of a building, I wonder what it would be like to jump. Now, if you have that idea, that doesn't mean you're an insane person. What makes it crazy-ish is if you do it.
Mhm.
Because what's happening is they're holding on to this thought longer
Mhm.
than they're supposed to. They're identifying with this thought longer than they're supposed to. And
Mhm.
so it's not the idea, it's not the thought, it's that we don't want to entertain every thought. And a very
Yes.
good person is Michael Singer, and he has this whole book about, ideas and thoughts are like clouds and they're passing by. And if you're old enough to read comics and you're old enough to watch cartoons, you know that when people are thinking, there's this like cartoon bubble.
Mhm.
And so if you think about these bubbles and you think about clouds, you just let them drift.
Mhm.
Sometimes walk around the block. Sometimes take a couple of deep breaths. You know, with my son, whenever he gets frustrated, the first thing I do is just breathe. Just
Mhm.
take some breath. Let's just, let's just see what's going on. Let's just analyze this from a third party. And proof is so important. We really
Mhm.
need to keep that going and not downplay it and even write it down.
Thank you. Thank you for those examples. So, how do you personally combat emotional turbulence when it sneaks in, especially on days when your faith feels sort of far away?
Yeah. Listen, it happens. It happens to
Mhm.
me. I'll tell you. Um, Emotional turbulence, just for example, because this is actually going on right now in my actual life.
Mhm.
Um, it's the month of May. My
Mhm.
last name is May. And you would think
Wow.
like, wow,
Mhm.
that's great. Like my last name is May and we're in the month of May. But the reality is my mother passed away a year ago and she passed away in May.
Mhm.
My wife passed away almost 4 years ago, basically. And that happened in May.
Mhm.
And so, I'm going to be going to a memorial service for my wife. I am going to, I'm working right now with the cemetery and the
Mhm.
stone people because I need to create a stone for my mother.
Mhm.
Um, and so all this is going on right now as I'm talking to you.
Mhm.
And that can create emotional turbulence. That can
Mhm.
create anger. That could create fear. That can create sadness.
Mhm.
And so that's not a bad thing. That makes me a human. It also makes me know that I love my mother. I love
Mhm.
my wife. I love my son. And so some of these things, it's not such a bad thing.
Mhm.
Like once again, we have to give ourselves grace. We have to make sure,
Yes.
sometimes you watch these people on YouTube and you think that, oh, I'm never supposed to feel angry. I'm never supposed to
Mhm.
feel triggered. No, no, but we want to, I like this idea. We want to have better problems. There's
Mhm.
no problems. We want to have better problems. We don't want to be on the Jerry Springer show and have those problems.
Yes.
We want to have like, ooh, I have $1 million in my bank account and I want to buy an investment property. Which property should I buy? That's the problems that we want.
Mhm.
We don't want to worry about baby mama drama or whatever
Mhm.
is going on in Jerry Springer, right?
Mhm.
So the emotional turbulences is normal. It's
Yeah.
normal. And look, when you're going through the grieving process, you will get waves of
Mhm.
emotions, waves of sadness. And it might not happen for a few years, and then it might happen. You might get more, you might get less. And the only thing I could say to people is that's part of the human experience.
Mhm.
This is like when I get sad because of the loss of my mother or my wife, I appreciate that sadness because
Mhm.
that's part of the human experience. I
Yes.
appreciate, like, it's almost like I'm sad, but I still have a smile on my face because I'm
Yes.
enjoying that this is part of the human experience. And
Mhm.
I'll tell you, because I've gone down the rabbit hole,
Mhm.
and I could tell you that death is something that everyone is going to experience. Everyone listening to me right now, someone in your life is going to die. That's
Mhm.
not me being negative.
Mhm.
That's just
It's
a
part of
fact.
life.
It's
Mhm.
part of life. And for
Mhm.
whatever reason in our society, talking about death or talking about grieving, it's like, it's almost taboo.
Yes.
It's like, why? Because we're all scared of it. We don't want to
Mhm.
die, so we don't want to talk about it. And
Mhm.
so we have to understand with these emotional turbulences, if you just remember that this
Mhm.
is the experience, this is what's going on. And you know what? The fact is that probably someone else in the world has experienced this before.
Mhm.
It doesn't minimize it. It doesn't take anything away from it. It just shows you that sometimes you got to ride the wave. Sometimes you have to be a surfer
Mhm.
and ride those emotional waves. And instead
Mhm.
of resisting it, just go with it. And just,
Embrace it.
there
Mhm.
are days, real talk, my own life. There are days where I am sad and I have a Spotify playlist of
Mhm.
songs that I like to listen to that are kind of sad songs.
Mhm.
And instead of fighting it, I go into it.
Yes.
So, okay, I'm feeling sad. I'm going to put on sad music. And you know what happens? This is a fact. After 2 songs, I feel much better. Because
Yes.
instead of fighting, it's like a Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Come closer. Let me bring you in. So I'm feeling sad. No problem. I'm gonna put on sad music. That actually helps more than walking around and saying, I'm not sad, I'm not sad, I'm not.
Denying, yes. You have to embrace the process. I just recently went through the 29th, April 29th was my father's 3rd anniversary. So I can, how you say, relate to what you're saying. So I chose to celebrate his life, speak about, celebration of his life, his memory in a positive way, as to, so calm myself to be crying, and, I embracing the process, the grieving process. So it's really important. Like you said, you're going to have your up and down. You're going to have good days and bad days. You're going to have your high and your lows. But then, the way that you respond to those high and lows is what's going to bring you that healing through your process.
Yes, it's so true. And, like if you think about certain Bible stories where God is testing people, they were not happy when God was testing them, but they still believed in God. 2 things can be true at once. I'm not telling you to enjoy the shitty thing that's going on in your life. What I'm telling you is to remember that God is with you while the shitty thing is going on in your life. And that's a different nuanced thing. And so, if you look at, like, let's say Job, who was a very wealthy man, had a big family, and God tested him, and God started taking things away and making him sick and all those kind of things. Do you think he was happy? No. Do you think he was having a good time? No. But he never lost faith in God. And that's the perfect story for it, because I'm not telling you to be fake happy. I'm not telling you to be delusional. What I am telling you is you can live in the negative emotional turbulence with God.
Yes, and embrace that process and
Embrace it.
acceptance that we have to accept that it's happening. Because if we deny it, it's just like you said, it's going to just stay there. It's just going to get bigger. It's going to grow, and it's going to be harder to process if we just fight it. So one last, you get an opportunity to inspire and uplift anyone that is experiencing uncertainty, worry, what message of hope and encouragement would you like to share with the listeners today?
We spoke about uncertainty a few times, but I didn't really get into it. And what I would tell people is the sad and uncomfortable truth is that everyone is living in uncertainty. The only difference is that certain people know or think they know what's going to happen. And I'll give you a silly example. If you walk into a room and you turn on the light switch, you don't hope, you don't pray, you just know that it's going to turn on. But in reality, we've all been in situations where we turned on a light and there was no light, the light bulb blew out. So we don't know. We're just basing the future on the past. And you know what? If you don't like what happened in the past, then you get the opportunity today to be day one and start moving forward the way you want. Because there is no guarantees. And the uncertainty, it's part of life.
Yes.
Listen, we didn't know in 2019, we didn't know the pandemic was coming. We usually don't know that someone's going to pass away. There's many women that don't know that they're going to get pregnant. There's good things and bad things. And so with uncertainty, that's part of the game of life. And it can be overwhelming. I'm not dismissing it. I'm not saying that, oh, you should just, but understand that nobody is certain. People are just thinking they're certain. And that's okay.